time, they just dart across the street. Like every single day I drive slow and I'm on guard because here they come.
And is that within a school zone or outside of the school?
Atlantic High is right there, and shown on your map, yeah. It's within, but there's no slow speed, and it's early in the morning, and the sun is east, and you're driving east, and here they come.
Yeah, so that's very dangerous. That's unexpected behavior. It sounds like it's in a low light condition, and it's a recipe for disaster when it comes to.
And then they're in the bushes, and they jump out of the bushes. Honestly, they did it today.
Lantana Road between Jog Road and Military Trail. Fairly common distribution of crash patterns on this roadway that we've seen. Lake Worth Road, I mentioned earlier, I think we had about 3 or so hot spots that occurred on Lake Worth Road. And so when you look at the corridor-wide analysis, you not only see the high density and frequency of crash occurrence, a lot of fatal crashes, but you also see the effect of being within that intense area of the heat maps that we looked at as our first series of maps in the presentation. You can really see the effect of that by just the wide distribution of crashes in the neighborhood. A similar area, Military Trail, from Malaluka Lane up to Community Drive. This is kind of the north-south corridor that is in the epicenter of that dense area of pedestrian and bicyclist crash occurrence. Okeechobee Road from Drexel to Congress Avenue, so this is the area kind of between 95 and the Turnpike along Okeechobee Road. A lot of bicycle crashes and fatal crashes, including a couple of fatal nighttime crashes have occurred there. US 1 from Okeechobee Boulevard, right in the heart of downtown, up to 45th Street. A lot of crash occurrences, but also a lot of nighttime crash occurrences. You see within the downtown area, as you might expect. But even once you get up along US 1, the Broadway section of US 1 close to 45th Street, a lot of nighttime crash occurrence in this area.
I was going to ask you, so what is, you see, actually, you do not see the green anymore because of the density of nighttime. So what is that starting point? Can you pinpoint what is the east-west road from which to the north of that you cannot see the green anymore just because of the incidence of...
We could, yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but that would
because that would be a place, there seems to be something happening at nighttime there, right?
That would be good to know.
Yeah, Alex, what do you think it is?
There's something.
Well, and I'm not sure which are some of the crossings there. Is that 45th, the bigger line that you have there?
I think 45th.
No, is 45th down or is that 36?
This I think is 36th. I think
Then it's that probably 45th, so that may be 40th. So
Something
it starts on
like that,
40th,
yeah.
give or take,
Generally speaking, yeah, from 40th up to about 45th
or even
even
beyond,
next
48th or
north,
49th.
yeah.
Okay.
is, for whatever reason, a particularly high incidence of nighttime.
And a small section of that is the subject of the city's proposed lane elimination project.
Mhm.
Actually,
Yeah.
northernmost end is 42nd Street.
Okay.
Because then we have the intersection of 45th, which is
Yeah. So it's
kind
like
of sacred, but
42nd Street down to about
25th.
25th. Yeah.
yeah,
Nice. Well, it's a
covers a small section.
high crash
of that.
corridor. That should be a data point that feeds into the lane elimination analysis. And then corridor number 9, North Lake Boulevard, from Military Trail to alternate A1A. And then finally, Indiantown Road in Jupiter between Central Boulevard and alternate A1A. There were a lot of mid-block crashes that occurred on this particular corridor. So the recommendations are divided into those 3 segments that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. This is just a list of some of the countermeasures. It's not meant to be all-inclusive, but it's ones that we think have the potential for really serving as countermeasures to the crashes that have been observed within the data. And so I want to show some examples of each one of these, and I want to get your all's input and feedback as to a couple of different things. One would be what your thoughts are on the likelihood that these measures could have a positive impact on pedestrian and bicycle safety, and also what some of the potential opportunities and also maybe some of the obstacles for implementation would be. One of these is that prohibited right turn on red in pedestrian priority areas, such as maybe downtown or along a particularly high pedestrian crash corridor. As you might imagine, one of the potential obstacles to that is going to be the traffic flow. And there are going to be potentially some that see that as a negative aspect of implementing that. So I'd like to just have that kind of discussion as to what some of the pros and cons, in your all's opinion, that you think these countermeasures may have. So what we have done is kind of structured it like this, with an image related to the countermeasure. And we've also suggested a couple of locations from the hotspots as well as the corridors as to where we think this type of improvement could help to mitigate for crashes that occurred in the past and hopefully to lower the number of crashes that will occur in the future. So the first of the measures is associated with a bicycle safety improvement. This is called a bike box or an advanced stop line, which is where you have a bike lane such as along A1A, and then you have an advanced stop line that stops motorists before the intersection in order for bicyclists to improve their visibility and not kind of get squeezed when the intersection goes to green and maybe the front car wants to turn right. This also helps bicyclists make a left turn because they can actually queue on the red light in front of the queue of cars, and so they'll be ready to make a left turn without having to actually merge over across the lanes in order to do so. And so we've identified two locations, one on Ocean Boulevard, in particular perhaps Ocean Atlantic Avenue in Delray Beach, and along Atlantic Avenue at Congress as well as a potential another location. Now, Congress is a focus of Delray Beach in terms of trying to create a more walkable, livable area. This might be implemented as part of a future lane elimination or road diet in that area if bicycle lanes are provided. But on Ocean Boulevard at Atlantic Avenue, there are bike lanes today that this could be implemented as part of.
Yeah, the only thing is that southbound on Ocean, as you go into Atlantic, there is a right turn lane there, so that box might not be the best treatment because of the right turns.
Actually, the bike box can accommodate a right turn lane, and it's quite common. This picture doesn't show it, but what you have is if there's a right turn lane over here, you still have the merging zone back here where the right turn taper begins, and so motorists wanting to make a right turn would merge across the bike lane before you ever get to.
If you do not have a dedicated right turn lane, then you cannot have this situation because you cannot have a right on red under that scenario with that configuration that you have there.
The bike box is associated with prohibiting right turns on.
Correct.
Yes.
So it has to be if you do not have a right turn, a dedicated right turn lane.
Because the advanced stop line means that the visibility is compromised.
You cannot go to the intersection and then see if there's any oncoming traffic.
Right.
If you're a car.
Yes. So that would be one of the obstacles potentially, is that if there is no right turn lane, then it would require also the implementation of another one of our countermeasures, which is the prohibited right turn on
I
red.
live off the Atlantic and familiar with both, and I think it's a really good idea at Atlantic and Congress. That sidewalk is so full of people that they're in the streets sometimes. I mean, it's got a lot of pedestrians and it's got low visibility because there's a wall if you're heading west.
Yeah.
But this is for bicycles. I mean, this helps cyclists. It's not that much of a pedestrian measure.
But it kind of helps them because if you're in the intersection, you know how people run right up into the crosswalk, they don't stop, and then you're walking around cars.
I think an improvement like this could have a secondary benefit for pedestrians if it just causes a more traffic calmed approach or demeanor from the motorists in the area.
And it definitely gives visibility from the pedestrians and the motor vehicles.
Another idea is associated with bus stop treatments, in particular locating bus stops close to intersections so that the pedestrians will be close to a crosswalk to be able to cross. You can see in the image here that this particular bus stop is located right up at the stop bar for the intersection. And so we've identified a few of our hotspots where there are crashes associated with mid-block crossings. And I think traditionally, when bus stops were placed in years gone by, we prioritized a little more the traffic operations aspect of where the bus stop would be placed. But now, and especially with the FDOT Complete Streets Implementation Guide coming out, there's now a refocusing on maybe thinking about the pedestrian first rather than the motorist first in terms of the placement of the bus stops. And so placing them closer to the intersections, providing comfortable places for people to wait, all these things help to improve the environment for the bus passengers as well as for people as they access to and from the bus stop locations. Crossing islands take many different types of forms. It could be a median in the roadway with a crossing in the middle, or it could be a channelization island, which could be associated with a dedicated right turn lane or with a traffic circle like this, but providing some sort of refuge space for the pedestrian in order to shorten the crossing distance and also to make the crossing task easier is one of the countermeasures that's been shown to perform the best in evidence-based before and after studies that Federal Highway Administration and other research-based organizations have conducted. So we've identified some of our spots and corridors where we think these types of crossing islands can help to improve the intersection for pedestrians. Often these are associated with one of those channelized right turn lanes, and instead of having just a striped out flush asphalt area that's sometimes just got some paint in it, actually putting one of these islands helps to provide that refuge space for pedestrians.
So you looked at these specific intersections and there is enough space right at the intersection to put something?
Well, there appears to be. Of course, we don't have survey level data or anything like that. But also intersections get rebuilt over time as well. And so in some cases you may have to provide some modifications to the intersections to be able to provide it. But what we're saying here is that the crash pattern seems to be indicative of an intersection where a crossing island would help.
And this could be used in conjunction with the pedestrian home signal, so kind of create
Could
a
be,
signal
it could be, yeah, pedestrian hybrid beacon.
Because, you know, if you think about it, I saw somebody on a walker cross Atlanta, and I'm thinking, how are they ever going to make it? Especially because somebody didn't yield to them right turn on red. And then they're in the middle with a walker, just in the middle, you know? Like
Yeah.
halfway.
And this is the type of improvement that can, if designed properly with the safety aspects like the hybrid beacon, can help to simplify the task of crossing the street, as well as providing a place for people to refuge in the middle as
Well,
they're making the crossing.
and you think there's older people who literally just are blocked because they can't get across the 10-lane highway.
So for Indian Town Road, from like Military Trail to alternate A1A, there is a forgiveness barrier in the center. Problem is the town, you know, they have multiple trees and all that. The other problem is that people are just using it, I'll be very nice, extremely poor judgment. Because they'll cross, when there's a crosswalk 10, 15, 20 feet to go right or left. They're lurking in the bushes, not on purpose, but you know, it's nighttime, they're in dark colored attire, and they want to get over to the Burger King. Again, I'm still being very nice. And they're crossing the street, because I can't tell you how many little stickers I can have inside my car because of how many people I've almost hit in that area. And there's opportunity for them to cross safely, but they choose not to. And that's a huge, huge problem. All these intersections, I've been here a very long time and I drive all over Canada all the time. And all the things I see, most of it is generated through poor pedestrian behavior. And some right turn on reds and there's other driver behavior issues. But the largest majority of the pedestrians get themselves in trouble when they don't follow safety patterns. So I think that's a huge problem that needs to be fixed, but I'm not sure how to fix it.
There's actually a false perception that a lot of pedestrians have that they honestly think it's safer to cross where they're doing because they're only having to cross one direction of traffic at a time. If you think about one of these big six-lane intersections, there's a lot going on. There's cars making rights on red, there's cars going through, there's maybe a left turn on permissive green. There's a lot to have to deal with as a pedestrian to use one of the crosswalks at some of our bigger intersections. So a lot of people have that false impression, but what happens is visibility is an issue, multiple threat scenario is an issue, and you have a greater chance of being involved in a fatality if you cross it.
Judgment is really low.
Yeah.
So that's my main focus is trying to change that judgment.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying with regards to, pedestrians making poor decisions, but about 6 months ago, I went out into the streets with people who had handicaps. They were blind, they were in wheelchairs, they were deaf, and we had to actually try and, we didn't blind ourselves, or we didn't take on the disability that they had, but we just walked with them across these intersections, and they explained to us how they were feeling in that particular moment. And when you do that, it changes your perspective. And whether or not pedestrians are taking risks or making bad decisions, I think is beside the point. We're mandated by law to make sure all of our intersections are ADA compliant.
And guess what? And that's a great point and observation, but in my years of enormous amount of experience dealing with trauma patients, I can say with great comfort that a very, very small minuscule ones were hit because
Sure, but
because they're following the rules the best they can and taking extra care, whereas the general population doesn't really care.
But
I'm going in the street and everyone's gonna have to stop for me.
you're absolutely right. But the impact it has on the disability community is that they don't have accessibility to jobs. They can't get to buses because they are trapped. They're trapped in their homes. They don't feel comfortable navigating our intersections and our streets. And that's, I think our role as planners and policymakers is to try to make our transit systems, which use these big streets, more accessible to the people that need to get to those particular, across those intersections, or bus stops.
And couldn't design stop bad behavior? I used the example earlier of there's bushes in the median on Atlantic Avenue, and the kids get halfway, stand in the bushes, and then step out. And couldn't there be crown of thorns planted so the kids don't go, or a low-level fence or something to stop people from?
There is limited use of that.
FSU put up fences.
Oh,
Right in the middle of the.
which is very unsafe because the kids don't see it at night, and then they run and they get halfway across.
And they just.
Yeah, there are a few examples of that. Orlando, Sunny Isles Beach down in Miami, A1A, has a low-level fence in the median to try to stop that. But Sunny Isles Beach also has signalized intersections at every single block. It's a highly urbanized section of A1A, so there's plenty of frequent crossing opportunities. I would say that those have limited effectiveness.
Okay.
Yeah. And it needs to be in the right type of opportunity. We can't put them in if we're not giving people crossings every half mile. We just can't. People need to be able to cross more frequently than that.
Well, why can't we use the same judgment that we're using at a downtown area in the case of the military trail? You seen in downtown West Palm or any downtown that the time frame is different, or they have it's more pedestrian related. But when you do those studies and you see the data and how many people as far as the crashes, why can't we apply the same rules that we apply to the downtown area to Military Trail and Okeechobee or anywhere from the maps that you see?
There are opportunities to be able to apply some of those same rules. We could implement no right turn in red. We could implement other types of signal phasing changes. We could have pedestrian crossing phases that come up on every single cycle. However, there are other aspects that we couldn't be able to implement, such as we wouldn't be able to implement much less than 180-second cycling just because of the mathematics required to get across the intersections and navigate those larger 6-lane and 6-lane intersections. So some of those decisions could be made, but because of the size of the intersections, others would not be able to be
Yeah, but
made.
instead we are widening them. I mean, how many widening projects that we do have in DOT? I mean, it's just, I'm
You
just
gotta be
saying.
able to handle 1.3+ million people here in the county that can keep going. That's the big challenge, because the traffic has to be moving. People driving the cars have to pay attention to what they're doing, not be distracted while they're driving. They need to pay attention, and they need to be following the rules that are laid down and have due care. And the pedestrians, again, I see a lot of pedestrian behavior. I see a lot of silly human tricks with drivers, but I see a lot of silly pedestrian behavior that are, can't call them ignorant to the rules, because it's very simple to see what the rules should be to be safe.
I think Linda has a good point, though. We were going through some of the corridors and noticed that there was a widening project that's scheduled for military and Lake Worth, and that's one of the corridors that you pointed out. I believe that was an intersection. So
Yeah.
there is that balance of, if we know what's going on that's wrong, when do we intercede?
In some of the intersections, you can actually implement an exclusive pedestrian phase where pedestrians could cross in all directions. And that means that you only have to cross the intersection one time instead of twice if you're making a diagonal movement. So some of the downtown type intersections like in Boca or in Del Rey could get that type of treatment.
Actually, we're looking at that on one or two locations in downtown West Palm Beach.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, it really simplifies the movements and allows people a greater range of mobility. Mike?
I was saying, I guess it also depends on, I guess, if it's a local government, I guess its intention for a particular downtown. Like, I lived in Dog Beach the first 9 years I was down here. And it seemed like years before I moved there, they made it a concerted effort to slow traffic down in their Atlantic area from Sutton down to maybe US 1.
Okay.
Just they could, I saw pictures of the Atlantic, it was twice as wide before. It's that diagonal parking. They shrunk everything because their emphasis was on pedestrian. Whereas downtown, like West Palm Beach, which is a larger downtown, so you have more opportunities to flow traffic. It's still fairly intimate, but at the same time, you've got more opportunities to move stuff there. And so far as the widening project is concerned, it's the development pattern down here. It's like you've got these large blocks that I don't think ever intended to be developed this intense. 40 years ago, you had this type of development. You're not making new streets really. So you've got existing streets that you have to make large. You really have no choice. There are a few opportunities to get newer streets in that can alleviate, run some of this traffic.
Absolutely. And the lane reductions is one of those strategies. And Boynton Beach is attempting to pursue lane elimination and the eastern end of Boynton Beach Boulevard, I believe in the area between I-95 and US 1, which includes one of our hotspots, hotspot number 3, right at Seacrest Boulevard. 4-lane to 3-lane is the typical or the conventional lane elimination, but other patterns are possible as well. And the additional space can be used for a variety of different techniques depending on what the context of the area calls for. Bike lanes, or maybe wider sidewalks and no bike lanes, or on-street parking, or there are many different type of choices of what that additional space could be utilized. I described earlier the leading pedestrian interval, and I think this one has a very important potential for application in Palm Beach County because it is it's not as drastic as kind of the no turn on red, but it does allow pedestrians to kind of get that head start into the intersection and help improve their visibility at the intersection as well. So basically what a leading pedestrian interval is that while the red phase is still active for the concurrent movement of motor vehicles, the walk phase comes on for pedestrians for anywhere from typically 3, 5, 7 seconds, something like that, that allows pedestrians to establish their position within the right-of-way. And then only after that does the green come on for motor vehicles, which could include the right turn. Leading pedestrian interval is most effective when implemented in an area without a dedicated right turn lane. That doesn't mean that it can only be implemented there, but it's most effective if you have an intersection that does not have a dedicated right turn lane. Lighting is very important. As we saw, many of our corridors have a high incidence of nighttime crashes, and so we have identified those corridors and hotspots that have the nighttime crashes. It's important to front light the pedestrian. If you look at the location of this crosswalk, in order to truly provide pedestrian scale, pedestrian-oriented lighting, the light itself needs to be between the approaching motorist and the pedestrian. So that does what's called front lighting of the pedestrian, which illuminates much more effectively. Pedestrian hybrid beacon, Fran mentioned earlier, the pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is sometimes called a hawk signal. It is a way of providing a pedestrian crossing where motorists will actually see a red light, which gives a pedestrian the protected phase to cross. However, the motorist experiences less delay than with a conventional traffic signal. And so that's why it is advantageous as a new form of mid-block pedestrian signals, because it has greater compliance with both by pedestrians as well as by motorists. It was tested extensively during the last decade and now is actually part of the Federal Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or MUTCD. And so that location in Belle Glade along Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard at 6th Street would be a good location for this, because it was that unprotected crosswalk at an unsignalized intersection, yet it's probably too close to have a conventional traffic signal beside the 5th Street signalized intersection. Then other traffic calming techniques such as portable speed trailers that can be taken around to different spots to provide a sort of sense of enforcement. These oftentimes are more effective than the static ones because they move around to different areas, and motorists kind of get the sense that there's a increased enforcement perspective in that area, and so they tend to slow down. Prohibited right turn on red, this is one that does have certainly traffic engineering and capacity flow impacts, but in areas where you have the need to focus on pedestrian mobility, or in areas that maybe you have just a very high incidence of pedestrian crashes, there's the possibility of implementing no turn on red either at one intersection or at multiple intersections along a corridor. And I think Lake Worth Road, as well as US 1 corridor from Okeechobee to 45th Street, which is the same one we looked at earlier, Alex, as part of that road diet.
So for the no turn on red sign, they also have LED signs that go on the mast arm. When the pedestrian button is activated, the no turn on red is activated. And when the cycle ends, the light goes off. So then turn on red will be prohibited until the pedestrian button is pushed again. I've seen that by the beach down in Fort Lauderdale. It was enforced too. There was a cop waiting on the corner, and when no turn red came on, people were turning, he was pulling them right over. So you could have some enforcement there as well to get people maybe used to this stuff.
No, I think that's a great idea. By my son's elementary school, the kids would all be crossing, and the people would be making, the parents would be making rights into the kids. It was like, what?
I think that's a good recommendation. When we went and did a site visit, just kind of observing what was going on in Okeechobee and Tower Hill, folks were just not even stopping to look. They were just flying through right, like heading east on Okeechobee on the Tower Hill, just flying right. And pedestrians were, we almost saw people get hit. Like they have the sign to cross with pedestrian signal, but people don't even, so a sign that says no turn or something when it's activated, it would really help.
Yeah, that would probably increase the visibility too. Maybe some of these signs are on the side of the road, the drivers aren't really looking there, but they see a stoplight overhead and then the LED lights are on.
Yeah, I especially with an enforcement, all you have to do is enforce things for several weeks and people get it.
Sometimes also even the turning radius may
You can
certain
tighten the
roads,
turning
you can make it tighter so that people are not able to do that quick turn there.
It's a good idea.
Another traffic calming type technique is a raised pedestrian crossing in locations where there's a need to provide additional emphasis for mid-block type crossings, such as the one we talked about in Belle Glade. You can actually raise the crossing up to the level of the sidewalk, which not only It helps the pedestrian community, but also provides a little bit of traffic calming, and there are pavement markings that can delineate that. It's sort of like a speed table traffic calming device, but with a pedestrian crossing.